My name's Dawn. I'm from Los Angeles, but I live in Ogden, Utah, and was kind of raised everywhere. But
Okay.
in 9/11 of 2016, I received a call from Erica, the investigator, from Lee County, Florida, Fort Myers, DCFS, or they call it LSF, and letting me know that my youngest sister's 4 children were being taken into protective custody, and from that day till December of 2018, I fought hard with, like, for getting the kids brought here to Utah to live with me because their parents had left Florida after about 6 months of them being in foster care. There was a lot of physical abuse in the foster care system. It's just a nightmare, but trying to get them here took 2.5 years. And
Was
then
it physical or sexual or both?
physical. They had
Okay.
no sexual abuse, none of
Okay.
them, but they were split up 2 and 2. So trying to weave that bond back together was complicated. But in December of 2018, finally the kids arrived in the state of Utah with me and remained with me the entire time. Their biological mother, my youngest sister Tiffany, had left Florida and went to multiple other states and committed crimes and was arrested and released, and she has a lot of different identities and stuff, so it's hard to keep up with her. But she made her way back to Florida and was arrested for like grand theft auto, arson, burglary, drug equipment, fleeing, and she ended up going to prison in the state of Florida. She was supposed to get 6 years. But prior to her getting arrested and getting sentenced to prison, the children were already on their way to me. It'd been over 2 years at this point, and the parents were not going to get custody of the children again. They were with me. Everything was fine until my sister got out of prison. She got out of prison in like September of 2020. And by January of 21, we were knee deep in issues.
Did she create those issues
She did.
by going to the government in
No,
Florida?
she was first she tried coming to the government in Utah, but she tried grooming the oldest child. And so once the government came and approached me, I did not allow them to violate my rights. I did not allow them to overstep their boundaries. And so they didn't like me from the first day. The first day the lady
Now,
walked
who
up
is
to
it
the door.
that did not like you?
So the first person was Brooke Zamora. She worked with the Division of Children and Families in Weber County, and I don't believe she's with them anymore, but she came walking up my driveway, and I was standing on the porch, and she said, "Oh, people like you, I have all kinds of resources for people like you." I don't still to this day know what she meant by that, but people like me, I'm a single parent with 4 kids. I have a couple college degrees. I'm a provider in dentistry, and I have been for 27 years with licensed as a professional for the last 15.
No, and you lost
I lost everything. I
because
lost
of
everything.
all this.
Yeah. So I can get it back, and I'm working to get it back because I know that I'm not responsible for any of this stuff.
So for the I'm just going to call it Child Protective Services.
Yeah.
They came to your door, and that's when your trouble started.
Right. So the trouble started when the mom got out of prison and was grooming the child. Then the child, so the oldest boy, he walked out that door and he was in his boxers and he disappeared. And within just a few minutes, I couldn't find him. So
He was living here.
yeah, he lived here, but he was hiding at the neighbor's house. I think he told him he was hiding in the tree, but I think he was in the garage of the neighbors, and he fell asleep because he was up all night. So within an hour and a half, I had a homicide team at my house. This is April of 21, and it was pretty intense and crazy. But that's where the lieutenants and some of these sergeants come into play.
Can you name him?
Yes, Lieutenant Vanderwerf.
From Ogden Police, or
From Ogden Police. They were with Ogden Homicide, but I called to tell them that my kid had left, and he went outside, but I couldn't find him. So it was
out of
chilly.
concern, you called him.
Absolutely, because I was afraid. I thought somebody had kidnapped him. And then I called my husband, who lives on the other side of town, to come over. He told me not to call the police, but I was in such a panic that I called. It's 7:30 in the morning, and it's windy and cold, and the only thing he's wearing is his boxers.
yeah. Now these days you can't call police for help because you will not get help. You either
I've learned
get
that. I've learned
harassed or murdered.
Well, the welfare checks are what's really going to get people killed. Those come later. So at that point, they put my husband in the back seat of the car and told him that I had killed the child and that he'd buried the body.
Who
So
said this?
somebody to my husband, I don't know who, but like 3 or 4 hours have passed. I feel like they're not looking for him. I want to go look for him. And here we are, you know, it's getting to be noon, and this started about 8.
So they already kissed him off because they think he's dead. Because someone told them, not your husband.
They didn't believe anything that I said. When I said he was just in his, you know, chonies, they said, they called bullshit. Like, and it's true, they found him in just his chonies. So, that's kind of where the fight started, because they were just like on me, like in my house right next to me, but I still had 3 other kids in there.
So they were interrogating you
Absolutely,
in your house.
but I had no idea about that until after they released my husband. But the thing is if you're a mother, you know, parent, whatever, if you have 4 kids and you got issues with one, as soon as you lose it, it's lost. Like, I have to maintain something for the other kids, because I don't need to have them feel fearful or afraid or scared, because at that point I don't know what emotion to really uphold. And unless you've had your children abducted, I mean, it's kind of a hard emotion to try to have somebody understand. But about 3:30 he came walking out of the neighbor's yard, and you know, the cops are here. But the thing is they were being dicks to me, and I asked them to leave, that I was done, get the fuck off my property. I'm gonna go look for my kid myself. I got with some other lady, and we put together some teams, and we were gonna go start wandering around the neighborhoods.
Something that I don't understand. You said he walked out.
So he walked out of that door, and I don't know which way he went.
So you were gonna go look for him, but that was
I
before
did look
walked
for him.
up.
No, I did look for him,
Yeah,
and
but
I was
then he
screaming.
showed up here at your house.
Not for 6.5 hours.
Okay.
So he was gone. But the thing is when all the cops came, one
beginning.
cop came, and I'm running up and down the street pounding on doors and screaming and crying, and he didn't get out of his car, and I'm like, no one's gonna answer the door for me, it's early, and I just look like a crazy, I need the police to knock on the door to see. Right, but I was terrified.
Yeah.
And so then I think he knocked on a few doors, but right away they just brought a lot of other officers, and then they got me inside the house, and then kind of just trapped me in there.
So from the beginning of all this, the Ogden Police Department painted you as a bad person.
They spent
You
6
killed
hours
the
underneath
kid.
my house digging, and I live in a Rambler. But if they would have asked me, this is April. In January, my pressure sensor valve on my water heater was broken for about 32 days before I figured it out. So that means that your water heater fills up with water, and then it just dumps it all to the ground. So it's going under the house. So there was disturbed dirt under there. But when the cops came, and they came like a ton, there was a helicopter, everything. I let them know initially that my kids are scared of police, because police are what removed them from their home in Florida. And they used battering rams, and it was really scary and traumatic for them.
Stop.
I didn't learn that until my
stop
issue with the
for a
battering
second.
ram.
So you found the boy.
He decided to show himself. They had tracking dogs and everything.
So I'm kind of losing the continuum of time here. When did they start using why did they use a battering ram when they were already in the house?
So when they were taken in Florida, they used a
That's
battering
in Florida,
ram.
not here.
They beat the door down. So when they came
that's why
here
they
with
were
the battering
afraid.
ram, that's
Yeah.
why my kids were so scared. He was scared to death. He said, Auntie, they have that thing that they used when they busted down Mommy's door, and I was on
Why
Monroe.
were they going to make a forced entry into your home when they're already there?
I don't know. Why were they pretending like I was here when there's no car in the driveway? They call out the fact that I'm a single parent, so I'm one person, I have one vehicle, but you continue to come over and pound on my doors and windows all around the sides of the house. They just beat on it.
Wow.
And there's no car in the driveway.
And then
I'm not
every
home.
time they show up here, they always what do they do to your evidence, your camera?
So they like to cover it up. They did it yesterday. They walk up and cover the camera. So
Tell us why you believe they cover the camera.
Well, because they have something to hide. Why else would you cover a camera?
Okay.
We're on camera everywhere we go.
So they don't want to be the face of harassment.
Right. Well, the guy that put the evidence sticker, Detective Pratt, I guess you could say I heckled him a little bit. I called him because he was in charge of my burglary case.
But you're
My
right.
house was burglarized. But I asked him where I could find some more of those evidence stickers.
Now let me. I know that
But there was audio recording that went on for a while after he put that sticker over.
people are like to say, especially all the bootlickers and
Leather chewers.
and yeah,
Yeah.
they love to say, oh well, her language, but you,
but it didn't
let
start
me
out that way.
let me. You are a very spoken person,
very well-educated
but
individual.
you will defend yourself, and it is your right to talk the way you
When you
want to
have
talk.
previous trauma, and then you're being exposed to current trauma, and you're fearful, and you have something to protect, I felt that the only thing that I had was my voice.
Thank you.
to protect myself, because I can't use physical
Against them,
anything
yeah.
to protect us. So the only thing I can do is use my voice. But the language kind of escalated, because when all of these things were happening with the biological mother and the DCFS people, no one was listening to me. No one would hear me. I begged everybody to help us and to make this stop, like the guardian ad litem, the police, everybody. The biological mother, I mean, and I hate to say it because she's my sister, she is not a good person. She really isn't. She has a habitual history of
These are the ones
drug
with the
use
kids,
and
right?
criminal. Yeah. So I guess it was just a way to protect myself. I didn't start that way, but once they started like accusing me and just being very aggressive, then I got that way. But they weren't listening when I wasn't using cuss
I want to
words.
interject something here so everybody that's watching this understands. When the police, this is the way I am. I never started swearing at anybody until
Right,
they
I
put their
noticed.
hands on me, and that was more. So the point that I want to make here, we as citizens, when police come in,
it's a
they
natural
think they
reaction.
have, they think they have total authority over you, and they mentally rape you, and then they physically taunt you.
And then if you're not acting a certain way,
Compliant.
they're complaining about it. But if you're acting a certain way, they're complaining about it.
But your rights are totally gone, just like when we went into the county jail.
Right, but it's a natural reaction. If I have a purple
That's
circle,
the
if you
point
get in
that I
my
wanna
circle, then
dwell
I'm
on.
gonna start to
The only
protect
thing
myself.
that you had to fight against them was your words.
Right.
And you didn't care if they were foul or not, because you knew that would get to them.
Right. Well, the thing is
'Cause
they
that's
needed
what I
to
did.
they needed to understand the magnitude of my seriousness. I wanted to be left alone. I asked when they were coming, and so they were doing welfare checks, like by who knows who. But the thing is they were escalating the
What
situation,
did they
and I asked
base
them
their
to call me.
welfare check
They won't tell
on?
you it's private. They won't tell you who called. They
So
won't.
they can just come into
Yeah,
your house
yeah,
and say
so
we'd make a welfare check.
You need to be careful.
based
Those
upon
welfare
what?
checks are going to get people murdered.
So I want everybody out there watching this to realize the government, you know, you might live in your home and then you have one child that makes a mistake, and then they think they have total control over your whole life.
So-
and this is the focus that I want to bring right at this point. They automatically invaded into your life to make you miserable.
Yeah, I had. It was pretty infiltrated.
And because of your language to them, to protect
which
yourself.
didn't start for like more than a year after the harassment.
But because of your language, they take offense to it, and they'll do everything they
It's
can.
retaliatory
to make
in
you-
nature.
Exactly.
It's
Good word.
it's actually.
It's in
quite
their
frightening.
nature. It's in
It
their
is.
nature.
It
yeah.
is. And the thing here in Ogden, which I'm not from Ogden, but I've lived here more than a decade, and my issues didn't start heavily with the law enforcement until September of 23, as far as criminal stuff. But prior to that, so my oldest child with trauma has a fight or flight response, and he's had it since he got here. He had it before he got here. So his initial reaction is to run. You guys saw that when he tried to run from the state. But he also is fearful of going back with his mother and would rather secure a safe location to be rather than to go back to his mom. I have some videos and some recordings of that where he's telling his mom he'd rather take his chance in foster care than ever go live
So
with
you
her.
have
Sad.
years of paperwork, documents of being harassed by government of Arizona and in Utah.
So
right?
Utah, the harassment started in March and April of 2021. Arizona didn't come into the picture for me until, so it's different because based on what I knew then versus what I know now is dramatically different. But at the time, September, when they removed the kids on September 26th, for
year?
reasons that are still unknown as of today,
What year?
2023, September 26th of 23, the day they covered the camera. But they tried to remove them in July when they came with the SWAT team. But none of
Wait,
this...
they came to your house with the SWAT team?
July 5th of 2023, they came with the SWAT team and surrounded my
How many
house.
days was that after he left, hit himself, and came back? How many days after that?
So
when
that
they
was
first
2 years
came in
later.
at your house?
That was 2 years later.
Why would they come 2 years later?
So the thing is that there was if anybody knows anything about ICPC or the UCCJEA, which is the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction Enforcement Act, and almost every state accepts that. That way, one state can handle what's going on with children who cross state lines. So it's a federal program because you can, I mean, you see the way that the cops communicate with each other. They can't find their head from their ass.
No, just like when they were arresting you.
They
One
had
is
3 people
one.
doing, yeah.
One was searching you. The other one was pulling at
Well,
you.
he was pulling me, trying to put me in a
Yeah.
different car, and so I mean, he was pulling his coworker too, but it's so
That was Parker.
so that yeah, it was Andrew Parker.
Yeah,
So
idiot.
the communication is and decisions are made from one jurisdiction, not 2 who can't collaborate. So that was, I think that, oh gosh, I don't remember. It was like the late 80s when most states had adopted into the UCCJEA. So what happened was the children were placed with me in December of 2018, and Florida kept a tether on them because initially it was going to be temporary, but then my sister got sentenced to 6 years. So they were coming to me anyways, but then once she went to prison, it was going to be determined on how long she was going to be there, if this is going to be temporary or permanent. So it started temporary. I was going to be the bridge that you know, filled the gap for my sister to get her kids back so she didn't lose her family. We don't have a lot of family. So, but once, I didn't know what she was arrested for or anything like that in Florida. But once she did her court process, they closed the case out here in Utah. Florida did in October of 2019 as permanent. So I didn't want to terminate her parental rights. I didn't want to adopt the children because then that will affect the relationship that I have with my sister and, you know, moving forward. So the state, when I agreed it was going to be permanent and the children were going to be adopted to me and they were going to handle everything. I didn't find out until April of 2024, like what Florida didn't do actually. So she didn't end up doing the 6 years in prison. She got out after about a year.
Was she on probation?
She was on parole, I think. And so a lot of this, like, I wasn't involved in any of the Florida court stuff. The only court date that I attended for Florida was in October of 2019 with Lori Furheim, which was my ICPC caseworker in Weber County. I was in her office in the DCFS building, and we phoned in and listened to the court, and then it was permanent. So fast forward to January of 21, I reached out and asked that same person and the district for help supervising these visits because it was my responsibility to provide care for these children. If you don't do the foster system, then you don't benefit from money. So it was on my dime. So I had to prove that I could afford to take care of them, and I had to do all these things in order just to get them. Background check. I didn't have a criminal background at the time. I never had one until September of 23. But so I did all that. I supported them. The state of Florida didn't help financially. They didn't help with anything, actually, nothing. They just getting the kids here, and then they told Utah not to help me as well. So when it came to resources, I had zero support. It was me and the kids. And I didn't realize how expensive daycare was for 4 kids. So, you know, it took a couple months to kind of iron that out, and then I was back to work. And then my sister really didn't try to build a bridge between her house and mine for the kids. Like, she wouldn't adhere to a once a week phone call with them or visit, even though we had 2. I set a date. She was supposed to set a date. She really didn't. She just wanted to control. She just said I was trying to control. But really what she didn't understand is that children with a history of trauma need a routine. You have to have expectations. You have to have order in your life, or else things are just out of control. The anxiety, I mean, it'll just eat you up. I had no idea that she was manipulating the oldest to say things. So she had told him
through phone calls?
Through phone calls. And I didn't monitor them like I should have. And she would specifically ask the children to go somewhere privately so they could talk. And her excuse was that, because in order for me to listen, I have to have it on speaker. So her excuse was that she could hear me talking in the background, so she didn't want to hear that. But she told the oldest that the state didn't like me and that they were going to do everything they could to help her get her kids back. And that was in 2021, late spring of 21. And they didn't really tell me until the kids told me in September of 21, verbatim what was said. And I mean, that's a lot of responsibility for kids.
Yeah. So let's talk about the problems here in Utah. Let's talk about when they start coming over, when they start coming here.
She lives in St. George, but then she met a boy that lived in Littlefield, Arizona, which is just spitting distance from St. George. So all your business is done in Utah and in St. George. So she was able to move her parole to Arizona. That's how Arizona comes into it. But we had a DCFS case from 21 to 22. April to April. I found out in September of 21, but it ended in April of 22, and she didn't get her kids back. So she was pretty upset about that. She had some felony warrants out of Texas. She had some warrants out of Colorado and New Mexico, Nevada, just a habitual criminal. So then after that case closed, I started getting calls in September of 22 from this lady named Gwen Doyle from Florida, telling me that she wanted to video chat my children. And I told her, thank you, but go fuck yourself.
Why would Florida, after all this time, they never give you any resources?
Right. And so
their nose into your business.
Years goes by, and that's so that's what I was trying to understand through grabbing documents and asking the court, and that'll come in just a minute. But I let her know that I'm sorry, thank you, but until I receive court documents that tell me that I need to do this, my kids don't video chat strangers from another state.
Good.
We're so many years into this that the two little ones didn't even remember foster care.
And I want to stop.
These people had no connection. They didn't know anything about these kids.
I want to stop and show the wisdom why you refuse to do a video chat. You just said it.
Because I have no idea that they're not a predator. I don't know who they are. No one has told me.
I think that shows what a worthy person you are to have these kids.
Well, as a single parent, if there's any single parents out there, you can relate. You are in a world full of, you have sheep and there are wolves, and anywhere you go, you are a target. I have 2 hands and 4 kids. I can't, So we had a rule of our purple circle. You stayed an arm length apart from me, but you are in a protective mode. Unless you've had something frightening happen, you even buckle down a little bit more. So these kids were they knew that I didn't have to teach them. They saw through my parenting style that I loved them, I protected them, I cared for them, and that they knew that they were safe with me. And they were safe, and they were happy, and they were well adjusted. They didn't show up that way, but over the years, the youngest was 3.
It's okay.
So Florida, it had been so long that Florida didn't even have anything to measure my kids against. So they wouldn't have been able to say, like, this child is doing well or this child is doing poorly, because they didn't have any original reports to measure it against. And that was another issue.
During this time, in the background, was your sister calling Florida?
My sister was calling Florida, and my sister was text messaging me. I have printed text messages like this thick. So she was like just parallel texting threatening stuff. And if any single parents know, like, there's apps that you can like follow your kids on and stuff to keep track of their phone usage. Well, good for you guys. I'm not that technical smart, and I work with my hands, so I didn't have the freedom to just check phones. So what I did is we shared an iPhone account so that anything my child looked up, any stroke he made, I could see it. But that meant he could read all my text messages. He knew all the phone calls and everything as well. So the messages were coming in, and he was able to read them. And so were his sisters if they picked up the phone, because they used it for music. They just didn't get on the internet. If they did, I could see what they did. So I asked her to stop.
To make the point that you were very... You weren't controlling, but you were very concerned about their welfare.
I was protective. Yeah, because I worked I worked in Salt Lake, so I don't want my kids out running around in the streets when I'm an hour away, because what if there's something that happens? What if there's an emergency? I can't be here. So once I was done treating patients and my hands were free and I could watch the camera, my kids were free to come outside and do what they wanted. But if you look at any statistics, kids that get in trouble, for their parents who are at work, it's between when they get out of school and when their parents come home is the most dangerous time for these kids, because they're up to no good. Well, it's like a rowing team. If we're not all rowing together, we're just going in circles. So we had to move through this situation and through this life like we're a rowing team, or else we're going to be going in circles. But then I had their mother, my sister Tiffany, just trying to break an oar at any chance she could, because what she had told me was that she expected that once she got out of prison and returned to Utah, that I was just going to hand her over the kids. But if there was anybody that thought that she should have these kids, it would not have been the government. It would have been me. I guess I can back this up a little bit. I have 2 younger sisters, and I adopted them in 1999, 2000 here in Utah.
Was this one of the mother of these kids?
Yeah, it is the mother of these kids.
Is she the youngest one of the family? And,
and I've had a hand in raising every one of my siblings' kids at some point.
And your mother remarried and had...
Nope, she didn't remarry, but she had this. My sister was born in Tennessee when we lived there.
Okay.
And I was 14
Okay.
when she was born. So a significant difference in age.
So she's a half sister.
Yeah.
You raised her,
But we were raised
right?
together,
Yeah.
so
But didn't you also take her in when she was younger?
I adopted her when she was in the 5th grade.
Okay. So I just want to ask you, did your mother pass away, or did you
My mother-
take responsibility?
My mother went to prison.
Okay.
And
so you took responsibility for your 2 younger sisters.
Yeah, and I was
So
23.
You're repeating with these children of your younger sister.
Mm-hmm.
You're repeating what you did for your 2
Absolutely, because that's
sisters.
what family does,
Okay.
is they take care of one another.
Okay. I want to make that point so that everybody watching knows what a good heart you have, and that you have always been there for your family.
I have a 43-year-old child that I raised.
Mm-hmm.
There's a 6-year age difference between her and I.
Yeah.
She's been married for 28 years. She's an educator with a master's degree, and she works and lives in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
And she's married with 2 kids who are now adults. And I did that at 18, and
Yeah.
she wasn't mine.
Yeah.
That's
But you
the thing.
stepped into where your parents should have been.
What I saw as a child looking out into the world is that I was in McLaren Hall as a kid, and there was issues in my childhood, but I saw the need for parents with all these children. So call it your patriarchal blessing. I knew that I would not have my own kids, that I would raise other people's kids. I don't know, my baby dolls were adopted when I was a kid. I can't explain it, but I have had a hand in raising every one of my siblings' children, and I have no issues. If my sister could get her life together, I would have loved a break. So when they came, first they had a lack of sensitivity to the entire situation, and there was no one there to comfort and nurture these kids. The state told me that they weren't sure why they were removing the kids because they haven't figured it out yet. And then the next day they told me that I will never see or speak to these children ever again.
What?
Who said that to you?
I'm not exactly sure. It was either Melissa or Melanie.
Mm-hmm.
And
From
the Division of Children and Families in Weber County here in Ogden, Utah. And they've proven it to be true. Although the kids have snuck and called me 2 times, once in December and once in February, but I didn't talk to them this year, but I did in December. I talked to my oldest girl where she told me she had been sexually assaulted in the Florida foster care system when she was split apart from her siblings. But she didn't tell me in what nature, but she told me that on December 21st of 2023.
So now all the kids are spread out?
But they were initially spread out because they needed to unbrainwash the brainwashing I allegedly had done with what they call it, the parental alienation. But now they're back together with somebody in North Dakota.
Okay. These kids, they were here with you. They were happy. They were they were in the loving
here for
home.
Almost 6 years.
They were in a good loving home and everything. And here comes the government to destroy it, right?
Right, because somebody said something to someone else, and then they came over and tried to violate my rights.
Okay,
give
let's
me court
talk about that.
documents.
Someone said something to somebody else.
Third-party stuff is acceptable in juvenile court.
Okay, but here's what I want to say. Have you been able to identify who this third party is?
For the most part, I have isolated third parties.
Okay. Was it a busybody? Was it someone that meant you harm, somebody that wanted to...
It was their mother who...
Oh.
Their mother was the one that in July of 22 got it off the ground to go back to Florida, and I heard from Florida in September. But
so did she use the older son to say things that were
she
inappropriate?
did. She was recording him
'Cause I'm not
without
trying
his
to put
knowledge.
words in your mouth.
I have
I'm
a copy of the
just following
recording.
your story is what I'm doing.
She said, you need to say this, or else you're going into foster care. They don't like your aunt, and to make sure that you come to me, you need to say these things.
So this was your payback from your sister, her thanks.
Right.
To defame you in front of the government, and now the government's listening to it.
But initially I was
nice.
nice.
Because the one son is he's been manipulated by his mother. What did the other kids say?
So they kind of follow his lead. But what he told me, and I have a couple of recordings of him, it's really sad. He said he was embarrassed. He didn't want to tell anybody. Because I asked him, why didn't you tell somebody? He goes, well, how am I going to tell? How embarrassing. The one person that you should, among everyone else, be able to trust, your own parent.
Is this his mother? you were talking
does
about?
that. Yeah, he said his own mom had deceived him, had manipulated him. So he felt so insecure because that happened by his own mother that I think he started detaching, right? He had made a comment to her, and for me, this is so profound. He said to her through text message, I have it, he said, you're not my mother, like, just, it's been years, you haven't been around. And he said, I love you no more than I love a bee.
Wow.
And to me, that is just like,
And that was sent by who to who?
he was 12 at the time, my 12-year-old boy who said that to his biological mother.
Wow.
We need bees to sustain our life, but doesn't necessarily mean that we have to like them because they might sting us. So we were trying to come up with an idea to make money, so just teaching them how to build careers and futures. And so we were doing education about bees to do honey so we could sell honey at the farmer's market. So just entrepreneur kind of
That's where
stuff.
his analogy came from
Right.
that
And
experience.
he's very good with numbers and money.
What I want to do is
And we planted things for monarch butterflies.
What I want to do is, from what I can tell, the kids loved you. They were safe. They were doing well. Then you started getting these checks because of what their biological
So
mother
Florida
was saying.
started doing the welfare checks.
But I mean, she was putting a bug in everybody's ear.
Yeah.
Third party thing. They believe it.
Yeah, because she was the biological
They
mother.
never verified it,
But
did
she
they?
only had residual rights. That's the issue. She didn't have any parental rights. She has what's called residual rights. So she didn't have the right to
The thing is,
do anything.
they were believing her lies.
Right.
Okay, so that's when, was it DCS? Started sticking their nose and doing their spot checks.
So that's
And
when
then-
it started to get really heavy and crazy. Because
So
that
did you
first
get
one,
upset with them when they would come to the door to the checks and then they sicked the police on you?
So initially, no, I didn't get upset with DCFS. When we had the 21-22 case, things were fine, but it was COVID. Get the fuck out of my house. You're not coming in my house.
Yeah.
Quit assigning me. Nobody's picking up my kids from school but me or somebody that I've already set up, not some random stranger. I had a lady that said, it's fine, I'll just go to your house and meet your kids. And I'm like, what are you, a fucking weirdo? Like, you're not going in my house and meeting my kids without me there. This is their sanctuary.
Who was that person that wanted to come in your house?
That was a CASA worker, which is fine. You could have
A
met
what
my
worker?
CASA, a court-appointed was something agency. So it's kind of like a big brother, big sister program through the court. I've actually been involved with it prior to this.
So what they do is gather information to tell the court if you're doing a good job. or not.
Right. So they try to befriend your child through manipulative tactics
Yes.
to
Which
get
they're
your
easy to
kids to open
manipulate.
up because the stories that the kids and I were telling weren't the same stories that the mom was telling, so they need a third party. But we had plenty of third party behavioral teachers. We had all neighbors, friends. But in December of 21, they ordered what's called a PSS. So a guy came into my home. He called himself David Jones, but he's David Shannon. It's with the Families First Family Preservation Program. So he was in my home.
That's the federal program.
That is through the courts. That the judge ordered
okay.
that. And
He came into your
he
home
was in my
without
home
without you being
nope,
here?
3 to 4 days a week for
So
3 to
why
4
did
hours
the
at a
court
time.
stick
So I had to
their
quit my
nose?
job to satisfy that. So January of 2022, I was no longer working because the state said that I couldn't work, teach my kids, and do all these things at one time as a single parent. But I worked 410, so there
So
was
the
no
government
way.
judged your behavior.
Well, they pushed me into a corner. No, at that time the behavior wasn't that bad, but they pushed me into having to have this guy come into my house.
No,
3
what
to
I
4
mean
times
is
a week.
the government judged your activities that you cannot do this, knowing that you could do it.
Right.
But they're saying no, you can't do it.
Yeah. The lady looked me in my face and told me I had to choose between educating my kids and working and being a parent because we were having problems at the school with my oldest because of the manipulation. So the behavior
So
problems.
what action did they take to remedy the problem with your oldest child?
Nothing. They literally have done nothing. So they
Really?
open and closed a case, and then they open and closed a case.
So do you think that they did that on purpose so that they could keep sticking your nose and eventually, which has happened, they take your kids away from
The
you?
only services I ever received from the government were the ones that were forced upon me, which was the guy in the house. But I said, unless you're coming at 5 a.m. or 8 p.m, like, we don't have time for you. So I separated from my employment, and I did that from January 1st to probably the end of April of 22.
Did
so
what
that
now?
didn't work.
Okay.
Because I wasn't able to facilitate this gentleman in the home if I wasn't here. I mean, 410s. You got the weekend to come over.
So pretty much the government
they
made
forced
you
me-
force you to
forced me out
quit
of
your
work.
job.
Right. So I generally would have a little bit of a resource. You know, most people would keep like 3 months. So I was okay for a minute, but then, I mean, things got a little bit scary. But I was also scared to go back to work because I didn't know if I was going to be penalized. So then there's something called PRN. Anybody that works as a provider knows it's just an as needed thing. So I started working PRN for the next few months, and then I took a job, but I was very secret about taking the job.
Okay, let's go back.
And I had that job until January 24th.
Let's go back to everything, the problems here in Ogden with the police
So-
department, how they got involved in your life and made your life so miserably.
So once Florida got involved in July of 22, which I didn't know that until spring of 24, they came and did a welfare check, I believe, in September of 22.
The Ogden Police Department came.
Officer Wolfgram. And then my sister mailed me documents to attend a court hearing. Nothing from the court, nothing legal. I attended the court hearing. I did record it because I wasn't sure. And my mic was muted the whole time. My sister did all my speaking for me. I said I didn't felt very well represented, and the call ended. So the court was over. I didn't hear anything else from them. Southwest Florida got hit by a hurricane, so it wasn't until May of 23, actually the 25th and 26th of May specifically, Officer Wolfgram came back again to do welfare checks. So because I wasn't allowing Florida to video chat the kids.
Was he flying from Florida to here?
No, it was a lady calling to just try to get them on my cell phone. Like, the kids just have cell phones, like, ridiculous. We have a home phone for the kids to use, not a cell phone. And so May 25th and 26th of 2023, I talked with Officer Wolfgram. I have those recordings. It's actually very cordial. I had a caseworker in June, in July, and then in August for different cases because...
So things got on a better level.
Well, things hadn't started to get bad, and I didn't start telling everyone to fuck off and suck my dick until July of 23.
What is your definition of things being bad?
The habitual harassment and a terroristic behavior by...
And who was doing that? What's the names of the people?
My sister and the state of Florida were doing it, and
Sorry about that helicopter.
flights out. So
SWAT team?
no, that's
they're
not.
back.
That's a hospital helicopter.
Oh, they're back, the SWAT team, because we're talking.
Yeah. So the things kind of got bad when I don't know. I don't even know. July 5th. I just know that I came home from work and there was a SWAT team that showed up. But that day there was an officer at my door his name is Officer Roberts. He's the one that leaned in the camera and said, "What's your information and your kids' information?" Mm-hmm. He never knocked on my door. They came up and listened to the doors and windows, but then I piped in on the camera because the kids called me and told me. And there was no mention of anything. And I told him, like, go away. I'm at work, right?
So they wanted to find you with your pants down doing something wrong.
I don't know what they were looking
That's
for.
what they were doing.
But Florida DCFS was going directly to the Ogden Police Department and saying that they had concerns about these children, but yet they weren't going through the Division of Children and Family Services.
So why was Florida, they've already released the kids to you years before.
So they're trying to assume jurisdiction again, but if you know anything about the UCCJEA, there's home state. So there's 4 different definitions that they give to these kids who cross state lines to give that state jurisdiction. My state of Utah was given jurisdiction over these children. So Florida did not have jurisdiction. So what they were doing was fraudulent and illegal.
They were harassing you.
They were terroristically
Was there money
harassing.
involved that they were...
There is money. I don't know if anybody knows what TIGDA is, but you should look into TIGDA. But the money, there is money.
Tell us what TIGDA is.
TIGDA is
Best way you
who
can.
regulates all of the funds for our government. So they're over the IRS, and so they're the disbursement and assigning like Social Security benefits, Title IV, Title V, all the federal government money that is titled that you learn about comes from TIGDA. And when somebody had mentioned follow the money trail, why would there be involvement? So I did follow the money trail.
With TIGDA
So as
and
far as
Florida?
the UCCJEA, the school district, the police department, and the DHS all benefit financially by having my kids live in their county.
Okay.
So literally everybody was getting money and resources.
So this
but
is
me.
all about money.
And according to my sister, those parallel texts, that the only reason I had her kids is for money. She said that I had been on state assistance since I got the kids. I'm a registered dental provider. we don't qualify for any, even with four. I could
So
have
not
9
even
kids.
a penny you ever got from them.
No.
They've never helped.
And they
you with
showed
the
up from
kids.
Southwest Florida in December to Utah. So imagine that. They were
Really?
cold. They didn't have the right gear. They didn't even wear jeans. It's hot down there.
Yeah.
So just putting everything together,
Go back to the money part.
So the only thing that I could find that would benefit, Florida had just had the hurricane. It was disastrous where they were. Their resources were thin, and it's against the law to remove kids from a home and to put them in another state in foster care anyways. But that's the only motivation I could find for what it was that they were doing. I don't have any definitive answers on that, but why else? They removed the kids from me on September 26th, and they were in the state of Southwest Florida in separate foster homes by October 5th.
So it was
23.
advantageous for them to listen to your sister, to stick their nose in your stuff so they could bring them back to Florida to have money.
And it's kind of hard to tell the story from the preface to the current, because there were a lot of things in 2023 that I didn't know that I do know in 2024. But I don't know what the motivation was, but I know that the kids were transferred without proper ICPC documents, which is illegal, and that the state just they weren't going to stop. But how it was is, if they could get somebody to make up a case to substantiate some findings, then they pull them into the system. Then Florida can petition this jurisdiction for custody, and that's what they put together in August. So
the
that's
kids
kind of
living in what state right now?
North Dakota. That's why.
Are you kidding me?
So it is. So by the way, they didn't make it back to their mother. It's clearly written out and defined in every document that we have that the biological parents will never have custody of these children again. I didn't know that there were like different kinds of meth, but I learned after reading my sister's drug reports.
So the reason why you've been having all these problems with the government here in Utah is because they're
Because of my
blocking
sister.
you. No, they're blocking you from getting any type of information.
Oh, yeah.
Because they don't want you to discover what they've been doing.
Right.
Right.
So
you're seeing
the only
corruption
person telling
involved.
me, oh, absolutely, the court clerks are the problem. FYI, America, the court clerks are the problem.
And that's why
Kiss their
everybody
fucking
here in the
Weber
government and Weber County,
demanded-
they know who you are.
Yeah, because I would call and say, hey, I got this person calling me from Florida and they're saying to do this and that. And I don't understand, like, can somebody give me some legitimate court documents? Because
Right.
Florida
So-
never
Pushing.
served me with any court orders ever
So you kept pushing,
Yep.
and they pushed back.
for documents.
So-
anyways, the Utah courts didn't want to cooperate. They didn't want to give me anything. I notified law enforcement. I notified the guardian ad litem. I notified the ICPC caseworker. I notified family preservation. Everyone knew what was going on. No one stopped it. They literally allowed it to happen.
So because you were getting close to what was really going on, they turned the police on you to make your life miserable.
So because I wasn't cooperating with Florida, they went directly to law enforcement. But one division should go through the other division. You don't bypass the division to do
do you mean
law
by
enforcement.
division?
Division of Children and Families. So
Okay.
they should be communicating with each other. I mean, they're part of the Health and
But to
Human
shut
Services.
you up from Florida, they called the police on you.
So Florida knew that they didn't have jurisdiction, but continued to lie, I'm assuming, to the state of Utah. Because I now have body camera footage of Florida. July 5th came here, flew here, 2 men. Don't know these men. Mind you, I have 3 girls and 1 boy. You ain't fucking taking these kids nowhere. You
Gotcha,
crazy
yeah.
weirdo. So they lied and said that I had appeared through Zoom for all these court hearings, and I knew this was coming, and that that I threatened. He said it wasn't him, but it was somebody in his office that heard that I had said people are going to get killed removing kids like this.
Wow.
And so that same day, that was before that guy came to my door and said, what's your information? So they sat in my neighborhood that whole day, and then they brought the SWAT team later that day to remove the
brought
kids.
SWAT? Those Florida guys?
So the Florida came, they told that to the Ogden police. Sergeant Hill had the SWAT team come over, and then they
So
realized
Sergeant Hill that arrested
arrested us.
arrested us.
he
the
already
other day.
knew about
Yep,
you.
Yep. Gary Peterson and Sergeant Hill were in charge of that. And
Okay.
and-
Wasn't there a Parker that arrested you?
Andrew Parker, but
So-
Sergeant Hill was over that.
All right, so let's talk about the arresting now that happened just 2 days ago.
So that was the 4th arrest for the same fictitious Arizona warrant. The first one was at my place of employment. The next one was at the ATM. The next one was at the gas station. The next one is standing out front of the DCFS office talking to you guys. I didn't have a warrant. There is I haven't been to Arizona, I haven't committed any crimes in Arizona. I don't even know what the heck they're talking about. But the warrant had been quashed already. On the 16th of September, there was no longer anything to do with the state of Florida. They didn't have a case. Everything was dismissed because I, pro se, just fought for myself and showed that I wasn't there. I didn't do this. But my sister was making all these allegations that things had happened that didn't happen, and I could disprove those, but they didn't really allow me an opportunity to. So everything was dismissed, and I didn't have anything.
So pretty much the sergeant that arrested you that day, he should be responsible to check if this warrant was acted or wasn't active.
So there wasn't an active warrant, and the state of Arizona told me to keep that paperwork that showed that it was quashed, to show it to anybody if I had any issues, but they never let me show it to them ever.
Said that we haven't identified.
They didn't let you prove that you had the warrant.
No, and so they know for a fact they didn't.
They went to the well 4 times on the same warrant to arrest you.
Right, and it was a bench warrant, and they came.
Was it true that the sheriff here called the sheriff down there?
So the sheriff here called the sheriff in Mojave County on the 18th, and they said that the warrant was still active. When the judge had already signed it the day before in the morning, because we solved this problem. Day? That was on the 16th. But we had solved the problem, me and Arizona, on the 12th and 13th of September of 24. So I knew that everything was going to get dismissed. I was just waiting for the documentation. So they're well aware.
How did you get that documentation?
Via the courts.
Okay, they email it to you?
So they, yeah. Well, first it was verbal, and then I checked the access stuff, and then I got the original documents.
And you have a copy of that document?
I do.
And I just want to make an advisement to you. You need to take your documents and hide them so they can't come in and steal.
That's why I don't put all my eggs in one basket, and that's kind of why I look like I'm scrambling sometimes, because I operate in in a reactive state now because of their actions.
Well,
I had a reaction, and very guarded and protective, so I don't put all my eggs in one basket, so I don't lose everything.
So let's go back to your treatment in the jail. Tell them what you went through. So they slammed your head to the wall.
Well, yeah.
Tell them about.
So I'm all bruised.
Tell them about the temperature of the room.
Oh yeah,
tell
they
them
do
what
that.
was on the floor.
Oh, there's.
And tell them how long it took them to allow you to go to the bathroom and food.
They have these rooms, I guess, that they put you in, like if you're drunk or you're psychotic, before they book you in. So when I first came in to get booked in, they want to go through some stuff, but my shoulder was really messed up because the way he was twisting me and the cuffs were on really tight. I asked if they would just loosen it so I could twist my arm and they could tighten it back up.
And they didn't want to do that because you're an evil, terrible.
Yeah,
you robbed like 50 banks already,
I probably
right?
beat old men and scare old ladies. Oh yeah, that's right. That's Ogden. That's Ogden Police.
Yeah.
So because I did that, the girl that was booking me in used to work for non-emergency dispatch. By the way, the court clerks in non-emergency dispatch are the fucking problem in this county, because they're licking the boots of each other, and it's a problem. And everything goes through that call center for non-emergency dispatch. So she used to work there, and obviously they hate me. So she must have given somebody a look when I asked to have the cuff loosened, and then I had no problem sitting down and doing whatever it was that they needed. And I had 4 guys that had me, and they had me kind of like upside down, and they took me into one of those shit covered drunk tank crazy rooms, shoved my head into the wall, busted out my lip, ripped out my hair, ripped out my clip, had still in cuffs, but had me on my knees, ripped my jacket shoes off, but they had their knee in my neck, in the back of my elbow, which really pushed on the shoulders and in my back.
They did
and
all that?
And I was face down, and all I did was asked to have the cuff.
What was the temperature
released.
of that room?
It was probably about 43 degrees. But I was standing barefoot on concrete in a room that didn't have a drain or anything, nothing.
What did you have on the top and the bottom?
10 hours. I just had a t-shirt and a pair of pants.
So you could not go to the restroom for 10 hours?
No, and I asked after about 4 hours is reasonable. Like, I need to make a phone call, I need to use the restroom or whatever. And
did you know
they told me to
anybody
piss on the
else that
floor.
was in that situation?
So Utah Defender was in one of those same rooms, but just on the other end. They put us opposite apart. I think
they
so
did
we
know
couldn't
that
communicate.
we were together.
Well, we came in a caravan, friend.
Okay. Yeah.
So they caravanned us in there. So there's just the treatment, just the lack of respect. I mean, just the action, the disgusting, like you're being judged for something that is alleged to have happened, but yet they're treating you as if you're guilty. And it's quite, I guess, I don't know. I don't even know the word. Prior to January of 24, I'd never been to jail or arrested. Yeah. So I don't have any idea, but they put me in there for 24 hours. They never let me make a phone call. The next time, they did heinous stuff every single time. They labeled me, Officer or Detective Buck in September labeled me as a gang member, shot caller, put me on the ATAC list, which is the ATAC list. So, yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Wow.
Yeah, and I think it's just because
tried
to protect myself. Well, it's not even a misguided truth. It's not even a miscarriage of justice. It's outright fucking fraud.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. Right. They get money from federal grants to fund that program. So I filed complaints.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I filed a complaint.
As soon the day you got out of jail, that was that
September 18th at 2 in the morning.
2 in the morning, and then what happened right after? They
gave me paperwork to go to something on the 19th between 10 and noon, which I did go, but I learned about 5 o'clock on the 18th that they had issued a Utah warrant for my arrest for failing to appear to court at 9 a.m. on the 18th, when no one ever notified me about court at 9 a.m. on the 18th.
So as soon as
I got out, they issued a warrant. So my next court date for that is on the 25th to take care of it. But I asked my attorney to get it quashed or whatever the fuck is going on. So we'll see.
As far as right now, you in your mind, you
have a warrant. I've looked it up. Yeah. And I knew based on conversation, because I was trying to get a copy of the Arizona warrant, but the cops continue to invite me down to their habitual abusive station. And I said, thank you for the invitation down to your entrapment house, but I'm good. And there's obviously a fucking reason that you continue to invite me down like I'm an idiot. I'd already been to the sheriff's office 2 times that day. I'd already discussed the fact that I knew I had a warrant. They chose not to arrest me, but then yet tried to get me to come back down there.
Yeah.
Like, can I make one more statement?
Sure. Go ahead.
When the sheriff in Weber contacted the sheriff in Mojave County, they obviously conspired about this fictitious warrant. I was told by my bonds lady, so Pappas Bail Bonds, shout out to them, Rainey and Julia. If you ever need a bonds lady in Utah, call Pappas. But she gave me some documents. They didn't come through, so I'm still trying to get them from her, where one of the states, I don't remember if it was Weber County or Mojave County, had her change the information on the bond that she was writing. And then Weber County Sheriff, or Mojave County Sheriff, called my bonds lady here in Weber County and asked her why she bonded me out. And he wanted to know more information, and she wouldn't give it to him. Shout out to Julia, you're badass. Yeah. But nice. I mean, how is that even possible? I've spent $10,000 just this year in bonds fees.
Wow. So you think that the people in the office that you got arrested on, you think they called the police department, told them, hey, Dawn is here, come and get her, or something like that?
Well, the way that they aggressively came up and just approached me directly, like somehow they drove by and saw me with a warrant or something. Yeah. The intention was directed at me, and it was malicious in nature, and it was retaliatory 100%. But those 2 people, Giles, I don't know who that man is. And you know what? I don't have any voicemails from him. If I ever talk to him, it's probably because I was going through a phone tree trying to get some answers to problems. I never was served documents to do anything. Do
you think that during that conversation, and there was that one woman that made the complaint, and never interacted
she testified against me in justice court for
was that Melanie?
She acts like if you look her up online that you're gonna actually recognize her in person. Bitch, there's like, the camera added 300 pounds, hooker. Yeah. So I mean, for love for fat girls. But the thing is that she's been manipulative and dishonest. I was told, every attorney I ever talked to about the DCFS stuff said they will get on the stand and they will lie, and the judge will side with them.
Yeah.
Well, then go ahead and lie and perjure yourself, but you're the one that has to go to sleep with yourself at night, knowing what you've done.
Well, it doesn't mean anything to them.
Yeah,
no, they don't care. They don't care.
These people, they just don't
They've
care.
taken I have no resources. I
mean,
have no education.
They're sovereign citizens. They're never going to be charged for doing anything.
I'm sorry, I wish we could go on and on, but hopefully people will see this video and understand what this lady's going through, and not just judge her for whatever the police department said. Oh, you have
Oh,
a
that's the
warrant,
typical.
and that's it. You know, every single person out there is judging her by her language and everything. Well, if you were in her shoes, what would you do?
That's the
Would
only
you,
defense she
were
has,
you,
is to
were
use her
you,
language.
were you welcome
Mama bear.
welcome them and lick their boots after being treated like that? They took her kids,
For no,
her
they,
kids for no
they
reason.
said they haven't figured it out yet.
They were here happy, they were here loved, they were here taken care of. Nothing was wrong with them until the police department and the government got involved and took her kids away. How will you treat
There's
the
no amount of
government?
support
How
or
will
money that
you
can fix that.
talk to the government? Let me know in the comments below what you guys think, please. I know this is a long video, but it's worth watching it, and it's worth listening to everything this lady has gone through. And please, thank you so much.
Thank
Her
you.
YouTube
Thank you,
channel.
everybody.
Before you totally cut off, this is about government corruption at various levels.
This is about these people stealing people's kids and
That's
breaking
right.
up families.
That's
Imagine if you were poor. Like, I wasn't poor enough. Like, or I would have. My fight would have been over a long time ago. And they want me to shut up and go away.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
I
you,
love you all on
everybody.
the same. Love you all. See you on the next one.